back to CTE Talk. Our guest today is Miss Pamela Webster. Um, Pam, as some of you probably know, and many may not, is the wife of Mike Webster, who was the first player to be diagnosed post-mortemly with CTE. She's been an advocate for many, many, many years for our older players in the NFL, and she's our guest today. Welcome, Pam.
Hi,
Well,
Pam.
thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so Pam, I know you and I have been friends for a while and shared stories and stuff, and many do know your story, many do not. But if you could start with whatever, if I ask, how has CTE affected you and your family? Let's start
Well,
there.
and we're talking way back when in the late 80s, when Mike was finishing up in Pittsburgh and headed to Kansas City. In Pittsburgh, I noticed many, many changes in his personality. And I believe he had, the early stages of CTE back then. And it only became worse when we went to Kansas City and they became more pronounced. Now, I think, and I've talked to, some of the experts about this. In Mike's case, it was very rapid. A lot of cases, the CTE lingers and it lasts a long time. I believe that this is due to the fact that he did play center on the offensive line, which I think is probably the worst position to avail yourself to getting CTE, because you're going down and coming up. And one doctor said that, it was the equivalent of having like 20 to 30,000 car accidents, that kind of force on your brain and things like that. The things that happened back in Pittsburgh were his personality changed. He didn't have quite the patience, the interest. He got angry easily, forgetful, headaches, the typical things. Now, in Mike's case back then, we didn't know what we were dealing with. A lot of people will say, the football players just get old, they get crazy, and they die. And now we know that part of the personality and the damage that occurs when they get older is related to the CTE and the hits on the head. And when we went to Kansas City, his temperament, his personality changed even more. Lack of interest at holidays, concentration was different, and energy was different, confusion was there. He stopped paying bills, our finances got kind of sketchy. And then so rapidly, after we were done in Kansas City and went to Wisconsin, everything went wrong. Within, let's say, maybe a 9-month to 18-month period, we went from having a good estate and having huge marital problems and problems with the kids. I couldn't talk to Mike like I used to. He was not interested or like cognizant of what was going on around him, and very vague, wouldn't pay bills. We lost all of our belongings in a storage garage because he forgot to pay the bills. There was a time I found out our kids' college education money was cashed in because he made a bad investment. He got some bad advice, which is very, very common with a lot of us wives. Will sit back and say, yeah, financially we were lost. A lot of us way back when didn't have the rights we do now, which wives now are aware of and aware of and can take advantage of. There's also more information now. There is the violence in football. There's violence in these men when they retire and don't know how to deal with things. There's also the pride issue. They were a football player. It was very, very hard for us, and it still is. We moved back to Wisconsin, which was a disaster, and people made fun of Mike back there. We didn't have any support at all because nobody knew what it was. A lot of people would say, oh, it's her fault. He's mad at her and she did it. And moving back to Wisconsin and no real direction and things. There's no handbook. There, at least back then, there was not a handbook for life after football or living with CTE. We didn't even know what it was. It wasn't until years later we put a name and a label on this. And, thank God Mike is like the father of CTE. And it was a high price to pay. I think Mike, being the team player he would pay that price to help somebody else. He was just such an unselfish person.
Mhm.
And it's just sad to see what had happened. I think my role in it was I didn't know what was happening. I just reacted, maybe not in the right way. I'm a better person now. I've learned so much. I've gotten so much support from ladies like Trisha and Allison and Chie and just so much more. I can't tell you how much that means to me, and it's kind of helped me through the process of grieving for the past, fixing the past, just dealing with what I didn't know. So it's been a real journey, and the effects on family are everlasting. I don't think they ever go away.
Mm-mm. Now you and Mike had 4 kids?
4 kids, yeah.
4 kids, yes. And how old were the kids when Mike started not being aware of things
Well,
around the
in
house as much?
Pittsburgh,
And
let me see, it'll take me a while because I'm not real great
that's fine.
with dates and things. When we left Pittsburgh, and that was very traumatic for Mike because he thought we were going to have a career in Pittsburgh, and he was kind of led down that path, and then that didn't work out for causes we never, reasons we never found out about. And he was he quit football, then he was going to take coaching, and then he went back to football. Hillary was about 3. Garrett would have been about 5. The older kids would have been like in sorry,
That's
7th
okay.
grade, and at very impressionable ages. So the older 2 know more about of Mike, and that the younger 2 didn't. But in every way, we all knew something was wrong. We just couldn't put our finger on it. We didn't know what was going on with Dad.
What would Mike say? Would he was he aware of the changes in himself?
Later on, he was very aware. He said his brain was like tangled fishing wire. And I think that's a perfect way to explain how the brain works on CTE. Sometimes he didn't understand. Sometimes he would feel very sad after, an explosive time where he might have, ripped, one time he was very upset. And this would happen often. I mean, you don't know what it's like dealing with like some kind of time bomb, and you don't know when it's going to go off. It's kind of like you might be fine. I mean, one instance, I would say I'd walk in a room, and if my picture on the desk was down, I knew there was going to be trouble that day. But if my picture was up, things were okay with him. And at Christmas, he wasn't involved with the kids, and it's just there's so many facets to CTE, and not an attack, a CTE attack. I don't think you can call that, but there are, I guess the good word is a CTE episode
Hmm.
where afterwards you feel terrible, but during it, all things might get destroyed.
Yes.
It's my heart goes out to anybody living with it because it is a CTE hell. It is.
Mm-hmm. And may I ask, what was the dynamic like trying to look after young children and also monitor and witness the changes of your partner at the same time?
Okay, and I think that I'm going to be really clear about this. I think now would be very different than back then. I think now, if I handled it now, sorry, Baudry, if I handled it now, based on the information that's on there, the support that's on there, and the knowledge we have, it would be totally different. But back then, I didn't know. The kids didn't know. They didn't know what was going on with Daddy, why he was sad sometimes, why he wasn't interested sometimes, why we lost so much, why we were fighting like when we didn't. I mean, we were very respectful of each other, and all of a sudden, Mike and I were fighting a lot, disagreeing over things, trying to find out what financially he was cashing in to do something else. It was like living with 2 different people. So the dynamics was we lost everything within an 18-month period. I had to start work at like I don't know what you would call it, not fast food, but like a drive-in restaurant sort of place. And that was really hard, but I had to do it to get insurance for the kids to go through school. Mike would send money sporadically. Some months we would get some money, some months we wouldn't get money. I found out that I wasn't listed on pretty much all of our investments. So I couldn't stop any of the behavior where he would spend money without my knowledge or cash in, savings or annuities or things like that. And then there's sorry.
Oh my goodness,
That's
are you okay?
Are you
Are
okay?
you okay?
I am fine. That
Oh
was
my
my
God.
head injury. That's Beaudry. That's Garrett. I said, Garrett, you got
I'm
to
gonna
watch
have
the
to
Beaudry
keep
joint.
that in. I'm gonna have to keep
Yeah,
that
that's
in.
definitely. This is Beaudry. He's a big
Hi,
golden retriever,
Beaudry.
weighs 100 pounds, is a year old,
He wants
and
to be with
he is
mama.
he's my mommy's little man. But
Oh my goodness.
sorry about that. I totally lost my train of thought. I think it was really hard because I had to be both places and try to explain things. I didn't handle it well. I'll admit that now. I wish I could have handled it differently then. I have a lot of regret about that. I have regrets about, we got a divorce just because I don't think that neither one of us really knew what was going on. I mean, so much was lost and so much anger, confusion, not knowing, not trusting. And there is a dark side to CTE that a lot of people don't want to talk about. With the kids, it was our normal structure, our normal routine was removed. Mike was no longer Mike. He was someone else, and we didn't understand the happening to it. And we were, once you're out of football and you don't have that football routine, I think it's really hard on the guys and it's hard on the family.
Mm-hmm.
And when you mentioned that dark side, not many people know the dark side of CTE. Could you delve into that a bit deeper and what that meant to you?
Yeah, there is a dark side to CTE. It's not often talked about. And I want to be very respectful of the guys, because truly, you can't judge these guys when they have CTE and this dark side, because it's not really them. You're no longer talking. And I try to say this to some, I've often had wives send me emails or direct messages and saying, privately, what's going on? What should I do? I know you said that you regretted your divorce and regretted what happened to you way back then. What should I do? He's threatening me. This is a great one. He's paranoid. He's believing things are there that aren't really there. I mean, for a while there, I thought my phone was tapped. I thought I was being followed. Mike was very suspicious of me. And, back then it was different because women didn't have the power. Wives didn't have the power. I didn't know about, oh, you're entitled to this amount of money or you're entitled to help. There was no help. I one time called the NFL and said, Mike needs some stuff done in the hospital. He's got some cellulitis. And we had no insurance. And they said, sorry, and I thought, oh my God, they're not covered by insurance. I thought that was so odd that, and now there are places to turn. But okay, back to the dark side. I think it's the paranoia, the mistrust, the communication. I had talked to, I think, Dr. Amalu or one person, I can't remember which doctor it was, but I said, his behavior was so weird. He went into things he would never have gone into. And they said that the governor on the brain and that part of the brain is in that frontal lobe. So if this behavior comes up, you're going to get very disturbing behavior that isn't common with them because they can't control it, and it goes from, some wives think, some husbands think, oh, they're having affairs, they're spending all my money, they can't be trusted. It's true, you're dealing with somebody that no longer is, and I try to explain that to the wives. You're not dealing with him anymore. You're just dealing with a behavior. You're dealing with this CTE monster that lives inside of him that he doesn't even know. A lot of times I know Mike had a bout with abusing Ritalin. And in retrospect, the Ritalin was the only thing that woke his brain up and helped it work. So, what are you going to do there? That's the lesser of two evils. If something helps and they do what they can just to feel normal at times.
Did Mike use, or if it's okay, did he use any other substances?
No. For a long time, and Garrett has talked about this too. in Pittsburgh, we didn't get any real support from any of the players other than, I think Franco was a big supporter, God bless him. But he was such a kind man. And there were a few others, but generally the wives in Pittsburgh that we had played with, the guys in Pittsburgh, everybody didn't know what was going on. Mike was changing, and I think, a couple of them reached out a couple times, but Mike didn't want any help. The pride was there.
Mhm.
At the start, now this is very different than now. At the start, we were really lost. I mean, we were alone. Nobody understood that there was a rumor going around, oh, that's just drug use. Mike Webster's got drug use. And it wasn't drug use, it was CTE. I mean, there was the Ritalin, yeah, but I don't believe there was any alcohol. We were, like I was in Wisconsin with the kids trying to get them through school, which was a project in itself. But he spent a lot of time out in Pittsburgh, and thank God Garrett was there, because Garrett became what I should have been back there. I would have been able to give him more help and not be afraid and do the right thing. And it's just a really hard journey. My heart goes out to all these, women, men, all these families suffering with. That's where my heart lies.
Mhm.
Mm. And for you personally, what was the moment where you kind of felt enough's enough? I know you mentioned obviously back then there wasn't a lot of, well, there was no information, there was no resources.
No,
And
there was
I
nothing.
wonder what the breaking point was for you.
I just think it just went on. There was no, it just went on. And, it's like the stress just goes on every day, and you don't realize it, and you become so used to stress that you don't react. It's almost like being in a war zone. You're so used to the bullets flying and the things happening that you don't react to normal. You don't know what normal is anymore. I was at the doctor the other day, and he said, well, when is the last time you felt unstressed? And I said, about 30, 35 years ago. I mean, that continues. It doesn't just go away. The effects of CTE is always there. You'll always have the regrets, the memories. The breaking point comes when you have no support. Back then, and I'm not talking about now, back then you had no support. Family didn't understand. Everybody blamed me. I wasn't being a good enough wife. I
Oh.
moved to Wisconsin. It was not the right place to do. I didn't handle it well, and I would handle it very differently now. But you're so used to stress that you can't save yourself. It's like being hit by another wave every day.
I was going to
It
say,
causes.
oh, sorry, Trisha.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, obviously, your partner becomes unrecognizable. CT makes people
Yeah,
unrecognizable.
correctly.
Did you feel unrecognizable? Could you not
Oh
recognize
yeah.
yourself?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't. My behavior, I did not react well to it. There's help now. There wasn't help back then. There are programs in place now that the NFL has done. So I think the NFL has made some strides forward, and I commend them on that. But there's still a lot to be done, especially with us older players. And we could use benefits. People are like, oh, you're Mike Webster's wife and you don't get any benefits at all. And I'm going, no. Once in a while they send us a trophy. The Mr. Rooney's been good about inviting us to game. That has been healed, that helped. But I lost myself. I wasn't me anymore. I was just, at one point, you'd go out just to have a couple beers with some friends just to get away. And in retrospect, you say, oh, what was I doing? That wasn't even me, So yeah, you do lose yourself. It's CTE is an all-encompassing monster. It's like a horrible cancer that just reaches everything and doesn't care, what it devours, what it gets at. So you can talk to any, wife, husband, player, girlfriend, anything. They'll tell you kind of the same story in a different way.
They sure will. And that paranoia is almost
Oh, the
always
paranoia is
constant among them.
Right. The paranoia is constant, and it's damaging. And it kind of like you react in the other way, because it's the push pull. The more somebody pushes at you, and I don't think they even know what their thoughts are. I honestly think the thoughts just come, and all sorts of things unravel in their mind. But the paranoia is horrible. It's damaging to a marriage because this guy, you don't know who he is anymore. And he's not the same in any way. You know, Mike was very structured, very disciplined. His interests were all family. It was family, football, faith, you know, and those things were all lost. But yeah, the darkness of CTE is very real, and it's very there. And I think out of respect to the player and being a hero and being who they are, a lot of people just don't want to talk about that. You know, like I thought several times about, you know, writing a book and really getting the truth out there about how horrible this disease is. And then I don't want people to remember Mike by being sick with CTE, even though it's helped millions. I don't want him remembered in that way, because Mike loved football. He loved helping. He loved, you know, the forgotten child outside that was maybe handicapped. Mike had the biggest heart ever, and he's very well respected. But, you know, I kind of wonder sometimes why he was chosen for the position he is. You know, why he was the one that opened Pandora's box. You know, why was it not somebody else? And then I realized it had to be somebody like Mike to have this effect on football and on all of our lives, because Mike was well respected, listened to, and he didn't give up. When he was knocked down, he would get right back up and go in. And I think it took that, along with, you know, we've had help. I can't thank the wives and the girlfriends. It's just like Trisha and some of the other wives that have given me my life back, my respect back, because I didn't have that. I didn't have any support in any way for so many years, and I just felt like crap. We'd go buy a football jersey in a store, and I'd say, "Was that me? Was that my life?" You know, and I just couldn't connect to it. And this wonderful group of women and they weren't, nobody from the Steelers, no Steeler wives. These wonderful group of women just came in and gave me a hug and supported me for who I was. And that meant the world to me, because, you know, after dealing with CTE, as a wife, as a girlfriend, as a supporter, even the other way around, as a husband or as a best friend or whatever, your self-esteem just hits the rocks. You have no self-esteem. You're beaten down to think everything everybody's blamed you for, or what the guy has blamed you for, that's who you are. And you lose yourself and you lose your identity, and you need somebody to pick you back up. And that's what my wonderful support system like Trisha, and I won't name all the friends, but just some incredible people, even on Facebook groups, you know, once in a while, Garrett and I get a lot of, you know, people who've had CTE in many forms, not just football. They'll reach out and say thank you, you know, and thank Mike for bringing this up and being able to talk about this thing that they didn't understand.
Yeah, it's been a long road since 2009 and forward. What year did Mike die?
What did you say, hon?
Oh, I'm sorry. What year did Mike pass away? I forgot.
He's been gone 20 years now. He passed away in 2002 at 50 years old. So, you know, when everybody needed him most, he was gone, and, you know, he was sick for years beyond that. We were only divorced for 5 months when he died. And in retrospect, that was really stupid. It was just, you know, you've dealt with something so long that it just happens. It was just on the courts, and it did. And it's very sad. It makes me sad. It's hard for us, because the benefits we would have got had we been married would have helped my family out of, we'd have a home. I don't have a home. I haven't had a home in 10 years. I haven't had an apartment of my own in 10 years. You know, I'm working. I'm a part-time caregiver. And I don't know. You just get down. You don't think life can be. Sometimes you see other wives and you think, well, their life is so different, you know. They're on vacation, you know. Why don't we do that? I'm sure, Trisha, you feel the same way, because I know you're working too, and even working hard at bringing this to light in this podcast. And, you know, it takes a lot of guts to get out here and talk about your failures and his failures and your marriage failures and that. But, you know what, somewhere someone's listening and saying, I can identify that. I'm not alone. I lived through this too. And how can how can I feel better about myself or help him more or something. So that's what we're doing. We reach out, and
Yes.
I know that, despite everything we've gone through, this is the reason, we're there to help each other.
Yes. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Pam.
I was just going to say, obviously, Pam, I know you mentioned how you lost yourself during kind of the whole experience and process. How did you work towards finding yourself again or finding a new self? Because there's no surprise that this experience would completely change a person.
Well, I think the love, like I've said, the love of Trisha, Chie, Allison, these group of wives that just came out of nowhere just to support me, helped me believe I was okay again. That I'd been through hell and I lived. I think my faith in God, not many people want to talk about that, but it's it it's made me a different person. It's made me realize that sometimes you do the right thing, and that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. And I think that as you age, especially now, I'm 71. You look back and you say, I want to make a difference for somebody with the rest of the time. So you do more thoughtful, meaning things. My life isn't perfect. Every day I would go, I just want a home. I want a family back. My family's not normal. Every one of them is still struggling. And I think it's going to be that way forever. Um, I think the things that Mike would have wanted for our family are gone. I don't know how they would ever come back. The Christmases together, they're gone. They will never happen again. My family as a unit, my children and I have not been together since Mike's funeral. I don't think it's ever going to happen again. 20 years, there's changes that happen within the family structure. As a person, I just think the support of other people that have lived through CTE, because it's like having a disease. Like I tell the lady I work for that has Parkinson's, I said, nobody knows what you're suffering with Parkinson's unless you walk that journey. And nobody knows what it's like living with or suffering with somebody with CTE unless you live through that journey. You walk that walk. And these incredible women and men who have reached out to us have done that.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate that honesty, and I think support is the key, isn't it? Really,
support and knowledge, and I think
Mm-hmm.
I think support, knowledge. I think the NFL could do so much more for us as a group. I think they're on their way. I think they've done some support. It's so much better now than it was, 40 years ago. But we're not where we need to be. And CTE is really a hard thing to talk about, not just because of the conditions or the brain or this. It's just a very private struggle. A lot of even men have written Garrett and I and just said, I don't know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Was Mike like this? And it's really hard. It's hard to know, okay, this is what you got ahead of you. Or we see it in other athletes that have been that are slow to speak and their thought process is slowed down. Or you might hear about their anger, their paranoia, their delusions. And you think of the family. That's where my heart lies, as a family.
Does speaking about it bring you peace, though?
Does speaking about it bring me peace?
Yeah. Speaking about your story.
It does, because like I said, I'm not now who I was then. If I could take my person now and put it back then, I would handle things so much different with the knowledge I have and the person I am. I'm a better person today. If Mike knew me today, I think we would get along a whole lot better. I think we'd love each other more, because you can take a situation like this, CTE or anything, and you can either grow with it or get angry. And some people got angry, and I've through the kindness of others, and that is the key. The kindness of others, the kindness of Trisha, the kindness of so many of the friends that have reached out to me, young and old players, young and old wives. They've reached out. That's how you heal. That's how you get through this. And if we can help somebody else, then Mike didn't die all in vain. You know, we've got to help each other through this. That's the only way you survive CTE.
Of course. And
that, oh, and
sorry,
education, like Georgia said, I think that you just said
You bet, you
education.
bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't turn a blind eye because you want your son to be a football player or you want to marry a football player. If you want to marry a football player, put your seatbelt on. It's not going to be an easy ride. It's like maybe some bigger perks now than it was back then, but it's not an easy ride, you know? It's like the education, I think, is getting out there. And I think things like this, what you're doing right now, is going to help many, many, many people. The more we reach, and many wives who think, oh my God, I'm alone. I recognize this in my husband. I recognize this in my boyfriend. And what can I do from here? You know, that's the things that we need to help each other on, because we don't always have that charity, that handout, that manual to how to survive a CTE and life after football. There's not always that there. So kind of, we've got a great network of women and men that help each other through this.
Yeah.
So you refer to yourself as you're better now, you're kind of a better version of yourself. So I just wondered, what would your better self give as advice to someone going through this at the moment?
You know, I think my better self would be, make sure you understand it's not you he's angry at. It's the CTE in his brain making him a different person. Don't take it personally, or you will just crucify yourself. You will lose your self-esteem. You will lose yourself. You will lose the energy that you have to get through the day and make a good decision. I think structure is important. Calmness is important. There's so many things that when you're living with CTE or someone with CTE, you're living in a cyclone, you're living in a hurricane. It's hard to find that calm in that kind of a storm. And you have to find the direction, the calmness, the routine, keep things the same. You know, at some point you have to decide, can I live with him? Can he not only manage alone, because you may never get that old person back. You know, you may get in a relationship or a marriage, you will never see that person again. CTE has changed him forever. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, and it's going to get harder. So you have to decide whether you're going to be along for the long haul or not. Back then it was a hard struggle trying to figure that out. And now I think through education, through talking about it, we know how to support each other.
Yeah. I want to add, I was going to tell you, Pam, that, you know, there are many wives that knew about CTE shortly after they got married to whoever the person that they're living with CTE, and still ended up at the same place, you know, with a destroyed family and all of that, knowing what was going on with their loved one the whole time, knowing that CTE was in there and still trying to make it all work. And so, you know, I just don't want you to be blaming yourself or let anybody do that. I know you probably don't anymore as much, but you know, even if you knew about
it's
it.
always kind of like, I think it's always back there because we were one of the first and we didn't understand it. And I got that. Understand that I got that a lot from Mike. It was my fault. I got it a lot from my family, my friends, fans, you know, people. It was my fault because, you know, I'm the woman behind the man. And I think with us, we always led such a quiet, common life. We were not celebrity, you know, that's like Garrett sometimes says, I didn't know my dad was a big deal. You know, we didn't do that. We took walks in the woods. We had a very plain house. And we didn't have that celebrity that people do now. But yeah, you just wish, you know, in your heart of hearts, you could go back and fix things, or you could make things better by the better person you are today. You know, you're still a wounded person. You're always going to carry that around, and it creeps up on you some days worse than others. And I think that's where you have to reach out to somebody like Trisha, like somebody like you're doing, Georgia. You're informing people, and and get that support. If you can't get it through the who you were married to, who's suffering with CTE, then you have to get it somewhere. Faith is a big deal with that because it keeps you going when there's nothing else that wants you to go.
Mm.
But like the damage done to the family never stops. And you can be in the storm and not know how to get out of the storm. That's just the way it is. So you got to find a lifeline somewhere.
And you are right, the NFL has put together a lot of programs.
They have
now.
It's like when we were doing, we don't get the benefits we should, let's be honest. But we also realize we opened Pandora's box. We're kind of like, could have put it under the rug, could have not said anything, but for a reason it was opened, and now the world knows about it. The world's indebted in a way to Mike Webster, and sometimes we forget that he was a great football player, the best at what he did, but he also did a lot for the world of CTE and a lot of world for the brain injury. I wish, sometimes life would have been different for us. I can't imagine what it would be had he not gotten CTE. But, that's, that I think with, soulfulness, mindfulness, whatever, you just make peace with the fact that this is your journey, accept it, and be the best person you can be to help somebody else.
Yeah. Wonderful.
We actually have a closing kind of tradition on our podcasts, Pam, and basically a previous guest who you won't know who it is because it doesn't link up to the episodes asks a question for the next guest. So I know we kind of touched upon the symptoms that Mike was showing, but the question today is, what is personally your most challenging symptom of CTE, and what were your coping mechanisms to deal with it day to day?
Okay, I am going to tell you that the most challenging symptom was probably the loss, the paranoia, the loss of the personality of the person you're dealing with, the anger, I'm not saying one word, the volatileness of CTE. Now I know that that's not always directed at me. It's not always my fault. It can be just the disease's fault. And I think that takes a load off and helps you keep your mind straight when you're going through that. There's not a lot you can do. You have to keep yourself in a safe place. As a woman, as a man, CTE can be very destructive and very dangerous. You have to keep yourself in a safe place. And your children, they don't know what happened to daddy. They don't know what happened to mommy. It's a very volatile place. I think the structure and the calmness, now there's so much more help, so much more support than there was back then. The damage was done back then. I can't fix that. All I can go is, encourage the people forward that there's a lot of help, a lot of people that care out there that have been through this. And it's not you, it's the disease.
Absolutely.
Because CTE beats you up a lot.
It sure does.
It
guess.
Totally beats you up. It does a number on your self-esteem and your ego and your heart and your soul. CTE is not a nice thing to live with. It's not like going through having some other kind of disease. CTE is a monster unto itself. It's, and if you've been through it, you know what I'm talking about. It's just, should they continue football with the risk of it? Because should they continue sports? Yeah, I think there will always be the need for sports, but I think we need to make them safer, and we're doing that. We're making people more knowledgeable. The careers are shorter. They're not going to be long 17-year careers anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, what an incredible lady you are, Pam, after everything you've been through.
Thank you. I don't think so, but I try. I try really hard.
I know so.
Yeah, well, you know what? You guys have, I love you guys. I can't tell you enough. what a difference you've made in my life by just saying, I'm there, I understand, I've got your back. You know, you need that, just that support, and you guys have given that. There's a whole CTE community that supports each other and that really looks to each other for, you know, just for that inner support for the person that's dealing with it.
Mhm.
It is quite amazing. It's quite amazing, the community that's out there now. So thank you so much, Pam.
Oh,
This
thank
has
you
been
guys.
wonderful.
Thank you so much, Georgia. So nice to meet you.
It's so
And,
lovely to meet you.
Trisha, thank you so much.
You're welcome,
bless
sweetie.
you.
I'll talk to you soon. Thank
Okay.
you.
Love you.
Okay, bye.
All
See you
right,
later,
bye-bye.
Pam. See you later.
Bye.
See you. Bye, Georgia.